It's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. By the way, dig the classic George Reeves Superman shirt. This is my new favorite shirt. I'm going to be washing it and wearing it as often as possible. So enjoy it while it lasts, because it's going to be car wash rags in a few months at the rate that I'm going. Anyway, this week my first question comes from Sire No, who says, "Hey Steve, due to you discussing cultural appropriation, I did some reading up on it. What I took away from my research is cultural appropriation often comes in the form of being ignorant to the actual culture of which you profess to enjoy. Example, you like Asian art and you buy something that looks Asian at Urban Outfitters. With that said, if you are of Asian heritage and carry out that action, are you still committing cultural appropriation? Another example, you're of Irish heritage and you dress like a leprechaun on St. Patrick's Day. Is that committing cultural appropriation? Your thoughts." I do think that ignorance of the culture you're appropriating is definitely a part of it. I mean, I was wearing shirts like this long before I even knew what this symbol stood for. I thought it was just an S. Seriously though, I think a lot of it is in the eye of the beholder. Is that cultural appropriation if it's done by someone who is actually from that background? I don't know. It depends on what you're judging it by. Are you judging it by people having lived and experienced and gotten to know the culture that is being appropriated, or just by the person being perceived as being a member of that culture? Because you can be perceived as being a product and a member of an Asian culture without actually having been living that life, without actually having had those experiences. And that's where we get into really, really complicated stuff, where like people are treated culturally for the most part based on how they are perceived, not based on how they actually are. If you are perceived as being a member of a particular group or from a particular background, you are treated accordingly, even if you actually aren't a member of that group or have not actually had that experience or come from that background. It gets really, really complicated, as I think your question demonstrates. My rule personally, since I'm from a culture, I'm from a background that in the United States has never been appropriated. You know, my culture has not been appropriated. My culture is the one that does the appropriating. So I leave it to folks in the cultures that feel they are being appropriated to make those judgments. If a black person or an Asian person or a Native American person or a person who is an immigrant from another culture, another country, says that they feel a particular, fashion or particular style of music or turn of phrase or whatever has been unfairly appropriated from their culture, and they feel exploited or abused or harmed by that, I take them at their word. I don't feel like I'm in a position to argue with them about that. There may be people who disagree with them. There may be people from their own culture who disagree with them, who think they're going too far, who think they're not being fair, they're being too harsh, too quick to judge. It's a very, very difficult issue, as many of these sociological issues are. But I don't think it's for me to decide. I think if a person says to me that from a different culture than mine, says that's cultural appropriation, I would say 99 times out of 100 I'm going to accept that. I'm going to take their word for it, because it is very much in the eye of the beholder. Aglaya Venters. "Hey Steve, from your atheist perspective, how would you respond to a theist who is suffering through terrible times and or some form of trauma and is now having a crisis of faith? If that person were losing his or her faith in God and wanted your ideas, what would you tell that person?" I would tell that person what I do in times of crisis, how I try to cope with the traumatic times, the terrible times. I would not use it as an opportunity to try and convert them out of their faith. I would not use it as an opportunity to try and convince them that there is no God or that atheism is a more reasonable position than their theism. I would not do that. I think that's completely inappropriate. And really just sort of heartless and callous and opportunistic. I don't think that's a good thing to do at all. But if someone is in a crisis of faith and they are reaching out to me in a time of trouble and they want to know, my thoughts about that, I would share from my own personal experience. I would say, well, as a non-believer, as an atheist, when I am in the same sort of position that you are, here's what I do. Here's how I give my life meaning. Here's how I try to cope with things. Here's how I reconcile the bad times. I would do that. I would not use it as, I would not, to the best of my ability, I would not try to push them away from their faith and into atheism. If that's the direction they're going, if that's where they're going to end up, if those are the sorts of questions they're having, I will let them take that journey at their own pace. And wherever they end up, they end up. But I would share with them from my own personal experience. I think that's the best thing that you can do. And if they do, maybe one of the things that is keeping them from taking that final step to leaving their faith is wondering, well, what do I do for comfort? What do I do to, to ease my mind in the times of trouble? And if you can share with that person what you do as a non-believer and how you get through the tough times and how it's not the end of the world and the universe isn't a dark, hopeless place for you, maybe that will help them along on that journey. But I don't look at it as my job to push them into atheism. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's my job. I don't think it's the friendly or compassionate thing to do. But I would share from my own experience with them and try to help them understand how I or someone with my belief or non-belief is able to cope with problems like that. Sabrina Loazides Meredith. Hey, Steve, we were recently at my 6-year-old's child psychologist's appointment, and she said that she needed to ask us, the parents, a list of questions from our insurance company about our daughter's general health. Most of them were the standard questions, sleep habits, eating, etc. But there was one that stuck out. It was a question tailored to religious belief. The insurance company equated quality of life with religious practice. To her credit, the doctor just shrugged when we said we were non-believers, but it bothers me that the insurance company would ask such a question. Do you think I'm wrong to be bothered about this, or is there cause for concern? Oh, I certainly don't think you're wrong to be bothered about it. I would be bothered about it too if I were a parent and it was insurance questions, and one of the questions was about our family's religious faith. I don't see how those two connect at all. I don't see why it's any business of an insurance company what my family's religious practices are, unless the assumption is that there is some possibility that we are practitioners of an extreme form of some religious fundamentalism where we don't go to doctors or we don't take medicine or something like that, or we engage in some, physically demanding rituals. I mean, I guess in that sense, maybe the insurance company could be interested, could be curious, like, are you taking them to the doctor or are you just praying, But outside of those sort of extremes, I don't see how it's an insurance company's business what religion a family is. I think you could actually, since you're looking at it from an atheist perspective, since you're looking at it from a non-believer's perspective, you could fairly categorize this, I think, as a form of microaggression. And I know a lot of people in the atheist community who are very hostile to the whole feminism, social justice thing, hate terms like that, but terms like microaggression, concepts like microaggression were created to describe events like what you just went through, where the questioner, and even probably the person who wrote the question, did not intend to isolate you or denigrate you or insult you as a non-believer, but it had that effect anyway. You were implicitly categorized as being less than a religious person by the way that question was phrased, by the fact that question was even asked. I think that is definitely a microaggression against atheists. And that's just one example out of many, There are many examples in our culture where atheists are sort of singled out or are explicitly left out from conversations that they might otherwise participate in and have something to contribute to. And yeah, I think you absolutely have a right to be concerned and offended by that. I don't see how that's a relevant question at all. I don't see how that's a question that should have even been asked. Captain Andy, do you think now it's slowly but surely dawning on anti-feminists that humanism is a worldview that very much embraces feminism and has done for decades, that we might see an end to tiresome and nonsensical phrases like, I'm not a feminist, I'm a humanist? Oh, I think you might be a little overly optimistic, but I would like to think so. I would like to think that this really, really ridiculous, fallacious idea that, well, I don't want to be a feminist, so I'll call myself a humanist, as though there's a distinction between the two, as though the two are mutually exclusive or are opposed to each other, when the opposite is true. Feminism is a subset of humanism. To be a humanist, you must also be a feminist, because humanists believe in equality and fair treatment and compassion toward all humans. Women are humans. Women are oppressed relative to men. Therefore, humanists should care about the oppression of women and should care about counteracting and alleviating that oppression. Therefore, humanists should be feminists. It's not that complicated. And yeah, people who act as though this is something that is being added into it just recently, the same people who pissed and moaned about feminism, poisoning atheism, are whining and complaining about the American Humanist Association introducing the Black Humanist Caucus and the Black Humanist Alliance, the LGBTQ plus Humanist Alliance, and the Feminist Humanist Alliance, as though these are just unwelcome injections of foreign material into humanism, when, as most people who are active in the humanist community know, there has been a feminist caucus in the American Humanist Association since the 70s, and feminism and equal rights for all people, regardless of gender or race or sexual orientation or gender identity or any other categories that people might be oppressed because they fall into those categories, that has been a part of humanism for decades and decades and decades, both in the United States and internationally. It is not a new concept at all. Feminism is not only compatible with humanism, it is demanded by humanism. Racial justice is not only compatible with humanism, it is demanded by humanism. Equality for LGBTQ folks, equality for disabled folks, fair, humane treatment of immigrants. But do I think that anti-feminists, and I might as well call them anti-humanists because that's what the fuck they are, do I think that this is going to dawn on them anytime soon? I mean, maybe some of them, but the ringleaders, the ones with the big YouTube channels who are constantly stirring up the rubes to flood into people's Twitter pages and comment sections and try to insult them and throw homophobic and misogynistic slurs at them as though they're accomplishing something. I don't think they're going to get the message. I think they're willfully ignorant. And I think it's in their interests to continue to be ignorant. It's in the interests of their egos to continue to think of themselves as being right and being smarter than other people, even though they have no expertise and no particular insight into any of the topics they discuss, it seems. But there's financial incentive as well. Some of these guys have Patreon campaigns that are incredibly successful. They have, I'm sure their ad revenue from YouTube is nothing to sneeze at, and they have cultivated these large audiences, large relative to the atheist community. I mean, none of them have like massive, YouTube channels like with millions of subscribers, but they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they have cultivated these audiences by appealing to the ignorance and the hate and the bigotry of these people that have gathered around them. So it's not in their interest to see the light and to make a video saying, oh, you know what? I did some research and it turns out I was wrong. Feminism and humanism are completely compatible. I really shouldn't have been saying that. You shouldn't say you're a humanist, not a feminist anymore, because that's a gross misunderstanding of how those terms are typically used. So that's never going to happen. There's no reason for them to do that unless they actually cared about being right and spreading truth to their followers, which they don't. Patrick Dodds, Steve, if in the years to come there developed a religion about Star Trek that swept the globe and dwarfed all other religions, like in that Futurama episode, would you, as a Star Trek fan, give it a pass? Or, as an atheist, would you be compelled to make snotty videos deconstructing or debunking it? I mean, snotty in the nicest way possible. I mean, it depends. Are they worshiping the Star Trek characters as gods? Are they saying that the characters in Star Trek were real people, not fictional characters? Then I might be compelled to make some snotty comments about it. But if the religion was just based on using the heroes of Star Trek as role models, as examples. You know, if it was just sort of a religion built around be like Spock or be like Captain Picard, then I don't really see how I would have that big of an objection to it. I mean, if you built a religion around the most ethical characters in Star Trek, I think that would be a pretty good one. You know, I think that would be a pretty good model for people to pattern their behavior and their thoughts after. Now, if somebody started a religion based on like the Borg, or you know, or the Ferengi, actually there already is one of those. It's called the Republican Party. I don't think that would be very good. You know, if somebody started a religion based on the Klingon Empire, where it was, you know, yes, there was a great sense of honor, but there was also a great importance placed on violent conquest. That might not be so great, you know. But if the religion centered on the ethics of, you know, the noble Starfleet captains and their you know, valuing of exploration and science and humanism and treating everybody equally and living, you know, in peaceful coexistence with others and valuing cultural pluralism. I mean, these are all really, really wonderful values that could make for a terrific society and a very peaceful, loving, productive, creative world. That would be great. I would be all for that. Sign me up, you know. But if the basis of the religion was, oh yeah, and all of this stuff really happened, these people were real, that might be more than I could, you know, I might feel the need to sort of inject the occasional smartass comment to that, while still viewing the overall enterprise, as something worthwhile, you know. I don't know. We'll have to wait until the Star Trek religion really catches on to see how I react to it. In the meantime, cue the thunderclap!
The lightning round. Rapid fire questions. Glib and adequate answers.
Night 6831. I've seen your 5 stupid things about Captain Kirk and Picard episodes, but I was curious if you had plans to do an episode of 5 things about Captain Sisko, Captain Janeway, and Captain Archer. Yeah, possibly. I might. I mean, that is a total of 5 Star Trek captains. 5 things, 5 captains. It might be too much to resist. I don't have any plans to do that right now. Like, I can't tell you when I'm going to do those videos, but I'm sure at some point in the future I'll get around to it, because I love talking about Star Trek. Lucas Hackett, one Angry Brony. Steve, out of all the pizza places I have mentioned, which one stands out the most? Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, Domino's, or Papa John's? P.S. for an extra bonus, what would be your ultimate pizza? As in, what kind of stuff would you put on it? Well, the one that stands out the most, probably Pizza Hut, because that's the one we always went to when I was a kid. Although there's a Domino's right, you know, a couple miles down the road from me, so that's what we usually order from if we're ordering pizza. And what would be my ultimate pizza? Well, I mean, since I'm a vegetarian now, I would have to go with something like cheese and mushrooms and green peppers and onions, red onions. Oh, that would be so good. Something like just a really nice veggie lovers sort of pizza, which I used to get that back in the day before I was ever even a vegetarian, so it wouldn't even be that big of a shift. But yeah, something like that, something loaded with lots of cheese and lots of mushrooms and all kinds of peppers and onions. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ, I want one. I'm gonna order that pizza. I think I'm gonna order that pizza later today. Christian Price, hey Steve, are you at all disappointed that the new Star Trek isn't going to be about Captain Worf? I know it's something that Michael Dorn and fans have been pushing for a while now. I love how many Star Trek questions there are this week, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I'm not disappointed because I never really expected the Captain Worf thing was going to happen. Like, I never got my heart set on it at all. But yeah, I would have loved a Captain Worf show. I would still love a Captain Worf show. I would love if Netflix would, like, just, you know, call Paramount and say, hey, can we just get, like, 10 episodes of Captain Worf and just see where it goes? Well, you know, we'll just put it up on Netflix, and if people like it, maybe we can do another one. I would love that, because I love Worf. Worf is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Trek, so I would be 100% behind Captain Worf. Hashtag, we want Worf. Kevin Logan, which is better, New Zealand or Old Zealand? Well, much love to all my friends in New Zealand. I think you're awesome. And I'm sure that where you live is a beautiful and wonderful place. But, as far as I know, Zealand, Old Zealand, is not complicit in creating those Lord of the Rings films. And because of that, I have to give the edge to Old Zealand. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry to all my Kiwi friends. I can't do it. The Lord of the Rings thing is just a bridge too far for me. I don't have that in my heart. I can't do it. Plastered Dragon. You look a little ruddy. Did you get a sunburn at the rally? I did. And you know the best part? I put on sunblock, but I didn't put it on right. See? I had sunblock, and it was the spray kind, but instead of just spraying it on, I sprayed it on my hands and then rubbed it on like this traditional lotion sunblock. And I still got sunburned on my face and on a lot of my arms too. So there you go. There's a great Reason Rally story. I used sunblock because I knew I would get burned, and I got burned anyway because I didn't know how to use the sunblock properly. Carlisle the Cinephile. So you're a Starfleet captain. What would you call your ship? I would call my ship the Atlantis. I would call my ship the Atlantis because the Atlantis was my favorite space shuttle. And the reason why the Atlantis was my favorite space shuttle was because that was the space shuttle featured in the movie Space Camp. So because of that, I would call my starship the Atlantis, if indeed I were given the chance to name my own starship. Francois Lecombe. Hey Steve, do you play chess? I would not phrase it in the present tense like that. I have played chess. I know how to play chess. At least I know how to move the pieces, and I know what the object of the game is. I'm not that great of a player. But yes, I have played chess before, but I haven't played it for a long time. Radical Bacon. If I cut Wolverine in half from forehead to groin, would we get 2 Wolverines, or would both sides heal together like a zipper? I think if you held the 2 sides together, then they would heal like a zipper. But if you kept them separate, I think eventually you'd grow out 2 separate Wolverines. And the cool thing about that would be that they would each have half adamantium covered skeleton and half just regular bone skeleton. So there would be they'd have 2 Wolverines where half of them would be a lot easier to stab and hurt than the other. You know, you just have to remember which one you were fighting and which half had the adamantium, so you'd have a better chance of getting out alive. You know which claws to dodge because they'll cut you in half, and which claws will just kind of poke you. You know, it'd be important to remember that when you're fighting the regrown half adamantium Wolverines. Joshua Purvis. Hi, Steve. My question is, I watched The Dark Knight. I like Heath Ledger as the Joker. He's probably my favorite Joker. What do you think? Thanks, like your videos. Well, thank you for watching, Joshua. Yeah, I love Heath Ledger's Joker. I think of the Jokers that have been on screen, his is probably my favorite, and his Joker is an awesome example of how you can do something that is completely different superficially from the source material and still wind up being like the best, truest embodiment of that source material, because Heath Ledger's Joker, the Dark Knight version of the Joker, not how I would do it at all. And yet somehow, to me, it captures the essence of what I have always found intriguing about the Joker from the comics more perfectly than any other version has. So yeah, I'm a huge admirer of Heath Ledger's version of the Joker. Der Wunderbar. Wouldn't it be amazing? Wouldn't it be amazing to witness a planet explode from space? I guess it depends on which planet. I mean, if it was Earth, I don't know if amazing is the word I would choose. Krypton, as long as I was on the ship, I guess, sure. I mean, Superman was only a baby when Krypton exploded. He probably wasn't that attached to it. If he had any awareness of it all, he was probably like, ooh, colors, look how green everything is, you know? Yeah, depending on the planet, depending on whether or not I was from there, or whether there were a lot of people there, it might be cool to see a planet explode, sure. Why do you ask? I mean, are you planning something? Are you sort of inviting me? Because I'm not sure if that's the sort of thing you should do. I would hold off on blowing up a planet, no matter how cool you think it might look. Just for now. Let's just cool it for now, okay? Speaking of cooling it for now, that's it for me. That's it for the questions. Before I go, it's time for a shout out. The shout out this week goes to the YouTube channel of the awesome, amazing, must watch, can't miss Benjamin Dixon Show. Benjamin Dixon hosts a talk show where he talks about politics, he talks about social issues. He is an incredibly powerful, progressive voice, someone that you absolutely need to be watching and listening to. I really, really value his show. I value his insights. I value his contribution to our conversations. And just recently, he had as a guest Kieran Opal, who you might remember was on my channel a few months ago, and we talked about Islam and free speech and internet harassment and all sorts of other interesting things. That video is still up on this channel. But Kieran was just recently a guest on the Benjamin Dixon Show. They had a great talk for about 15 minutes responding to the Orlando shooting, talking about issues like homophobia within Muslim communities that Kieran knows a lot about and is a great advocate for, and a great spokesman to speak out against homophobia in Muslim communities, which is a problem just as it is in Christian communities and other communities and the United States community in general. Homophobia and transphobia is still huge problems that are very harmful to people, and Kieran has a great insight into those issues as they affect the Muslim and the ex-Muslim community, and she and Benjamin Dixon had just a really great talk about that. So check out that video, check out Benjamin Dixon's show just in general. Go to his YouTube channel, subscribe, watch the show. I hope you find it as informative and interesting and useful as I do. I highly recommend it. The Benjamin Dixon Show. I also highly recommend, in a much more frivolous vein, the Lemme Listen podcasts. These are podcasts that are the creation of my very good friend Jason Harding. There's a whole family of Lemme Listen podcasts. There is Lemme Finish, which Jason co-hosts with Finite Atticus. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the hilarious improv comedy podcast. There's the new addition to the family, Cinema Shack. And there is Late Seating, the movie review podcast that is co-hosted by yours truly. Jason and I get together every 2 weeks and we watch a movie. We watch a classic movie, a movie that is considered either great or awful by popular consensus. We decide whether it deserves its reputation. Does it deserve to be considered a classic? Does it deserve to be considered an all-time bomb? We make fun of it. We make funny, hilarious jokes about the movie, even if we like it. Actually, especially if we like it. It's a lot more fun that way. And we do it all for your entertainment. And you can listen to all of the episodes of Late Seating, all of the episodes of all of the podcasts in the Lemme Listen family by going to LemmeListenPodcasts.com. And boy, I sure hope you do. That's it for me, everybody. I am out of here for another week. Please, as always, leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one last thing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.